Hi everyone, we're just going to get started in just a moment. I'm just getting the YouTube live stream going, and I think we're live on YouTube now. Okay, there we go. So, welcome all of you here that have joined me today on Friday. Happy Friday. My pleasure to bring you another one of these repertoire sessions looking at the Mosaics collection. And we're finishing off grade 3 today. A couple of weeks ago, I played through the group 1 pieces, Baroque and classical music from the grade 3 book. Here's what it looks like here. For anyone who didn't see that, look back at our replays there on the CCTV YouTube channel. Today, I'm going to play through the second half of the book, which we call in our syllabus group 2 music. And that is music that is either romantic or modern in nature. And we do have a few romantic pieces, which is great to see now when we get to grade 3. And so style changes a little bit. I'll try and pull out some pedagogy that's a little different, maybe things I haven't said so far as it pertains to the contemporary music and the romantic music. And we'll see what you think. Before I dive in, though, and we get into the music, it's going to be about 40 minutes to play through and talk about the pieces today. I think there are about 17 pieces there. Just an update on what's coming up here on the Friday webinars. Next Friday, we're going to not have a webinar because we're going to have our special convocation ceremony the next day. Next Saturday, November 23rd, beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to have a special session dedicated to honoring our graduates and award winners from across the country. We're going to speak with a few students. We're going to speak with our graduates. We're going to hear some of the award winners play live, hopefully. I think I know Zoom webinar well enough that we can orchestrate that and make it happen. So a few live performances from across the country, a few interviews, also speaking with teachers and examiners, and just celebrating all the music that we've heard over the past year and recognizing those students that are perhaps overachieving. And we like to celebrate them once a year, usually with an in-person ceremony. We've been in the habit lately of trying to hold this event online. Last year we held it in person. We're kind of going back and forth on it. It takes a lot of resources to do that. And so we're experimenting with this format. So we hope you can join us next Saturday. And as usual, we'll live stream that on the YouTube channel. There'll be no Zoom link for that. But anyone can watch it live at 1 p.m. Eastern next Saturday. Or of course, the replay will live there forever as well. So that's a little bit about what's coming the week after. The week after that, Friday, November 29th, we're going to have Dr. Erin Parks come back. She gave us a really good overview a month ago on working with students that are neurodivergent, students with exceptionalities. And she's agreed to come back and do perhaps a 4-part series, with the next part on November 29th being looking specifically at autism and students with ASD diagnoses and how to approach them in the teaching studio. She's a specialist on this. If you haven't seen her webinar, I believe it was October 24th webinar. It's a really great overview. It's actually our most watched webinar to date on replay, which is really great to see. Thanks for your interest in that. I suspected there would be a lot of interest, almost overwhelming here. So we have her back in 2 weeks from now. And the week after that, Friday, December 6th, we're going to have Olivia Riddell here from Music for Young Children to show us a good look in detail about the MYC program and what edge it can give students in terms of working in groups. There's a social aspect to it, but also pedagogically very strong. We have a large number of our students come from the MYC program. And so we're going to have her on the 6th. And then after that, we may have time for one more on Friday, December 13th. I'm just not sure exactly what we're going to do on that day yet, if there is one. But of course, keep watching your inbox. I'll be emailing everyone next week and in the weeks coming so that you know what's coming up. Thanks for joining me here today, whether you're watching here live in the Zoom room. We'll stop after for questions. If you have any questions as we go, just throw them in the chat box and I'll be sure to stop and answer those as we go. And then, and if you're watching on replay, welcome as well. Anytime after the fact. Today is November 15th, 2024. This grade 3 book that I'm going to play through the second half of today has been on sale for a couple of weeks. All the sales now are happening at DeborahWanlessMusic.com. I do notice that Long and McQuaid also has stock now in the stores and online. For those of you that may happen to be placing orders for other things there, if you like that convenience, you can now order them from Long and McQuaid as well. We hope to launch this grade 4 before the end of the calendar year. And so hopefully on December 13th, we may have part of that grade 4 book ready. I can play through some of the music then right before the holidays. At least that's our goal. So thanks for joining me here today. I'm going to give you a second camera angle. I know a couple of you have asked already too. It'd be nice to see my hands. So I'm going to experiment with this. I've got my iPad sitting above the music, and I'll turn that camera on so that you can see my hands if you have any questions about what I'm doing there technically. And that'll make me a little more nervous, which is great. It's nice to have a nervous load on the body to see what it does to you. So I'm going to share my screen here. Actually, let's get this going first. Make sure this camera's working. Feel free to toggle in the settings. I mean, in terms of whether you see my hands or whether you see my torso or whether you see the music, you can control that through the Zoom app. Those of you that are here, those on YouTube, you'll probably see a mix of everything. And as soon as I start playing, it'll show one or the other a little bit more easily. So I can't really control that so much on my end, but you can make adjustments on your end. I'm still getting familiar with the new settings here in YouTube, or sorry, in Zoom. I'm just going to turn my original sound on. I'll get a screen share going here so that you can see the music as we have been doing. And get this flipped open for you. So we're going to start with this mazurka. I really like this piece a lot. I played it quite a bit because for a long time I couldn't figure out exactly how I wanted to, what I wanted to get out of it. And so we were going to go to print with this, and then we found another original from Germany that George Litterst at Time Warp Technologies sourced for us a couple of months ago. And lo and behold, we realized that perhaps, we thought it was by Maria Szymanowska, but we're not sure now. It's attributed to her, but it may in fact not be by her, is what this source showed us. And it also casts it in 3/8 time instead of 3/4 time is how we were used to seeing it. And so I decided to look at it with this new sort of editing in mind, and to me it started to make more sense. The idea of 3/8, getting one per bar, keeping the left hand simple, still keeping the eighth notes really light, but also thinking of the left hand in terms of how the C chord leads to the G, leads to the G7, leads back to the C, so that we get this 4-bar progression. And when I started to play it in 16ths with this 3/8 kind of feel, the structure started to take over, and I started to understand a little bit more of what's going on. In bar 4, the right hand, these grace notes can be a little bit thorny, and as I got through it, I started to realize I could play those a lot quicker, almost like 30 seconds, and blending the grace note into the other 2 16ths. So you'll hear me attempting that. And then some signals in the very last line there with RF, little accent marks and rules in the left hand, to accent those a little bit. It slows down the culmination of that last line and makes that sort of the highlight of the piece. So it helped me to see the whole structure, to see this version of it. This is the version that we're publishing, and I think you'll really like this piece. We attribute it again to Maria Szymanowska, but we're not entirely sure if that's who this comes from. So I'm going to play through as normal. My apologies, those of you who watched the last webinar I did like this, where I played through the first half. My spoken audio was quite low. I thought I could get away with one volume for playing and speaking. That's clearly not the case now. It sort of changes all the time. So please let me know in the chat box if you're not hearing something, and I'll adjust here. So it can be a really fun piece. I decided to take the repeat the first time there just for fun. If a student did that on an exam, it's no big worry. You know, a lot of you ask from time to time what's the policy on repeats. We're pretty clear in the syllabus that students are not to take repeats unless it's Baroque music from grades 1 to 6, and on the repeat they were going to do ornamentation. It's not a hard and fast rule. If it's only an 8-bar repeat and it's a short piece like this and it's quite catchy, we're quite fine if students want to take that first repeat. Definitely the da capo though, however. So that's a fun little piece to start us off there. And then the next one, this is a difficult piece. This one took a long time for me to sort of settle into my fingers and figure out how to get all the little touches and articulations and get the playfulness there. The Butterfly by Samuel Makapar. So there's a lot of detail here. I'd probably start students off quite a bit slowly for a long time to get all the detail happening, and then just give it some time to bake and really make sure it gets into the student's body carefully. See, it starts on an upbeat, 4/16 notes, Leggiero, very difficult to get that nice and clean so that I feel I know where beat 1 is. I'm being really honest with the articulation in terms of what is slurred, what is lifted very crisply, and then the tenutos, what kind of accent I can deliver without being too heavy. So of course, the whole thing, when you step back and look at it, is more or less on the soft side. There's a chance to open up in the middle in the B section, from a bar 8 to bar 12, there's a poco crescendo that it took me a bit of time to buy into that, and now I feel quite comfortable with it. It's nice to learn this piece. I put quite a bit of time into it, and hope you get all the detail coming through here in the recording. So, effervescent is what I'm sort of going for there. Light and fluffy, lots of little touches, but it's really important to get that swell in the middle, bring out that crescendo to have just a little bit of relief in terms of the overall structure of the music. A little bit of pedal shots too. You can see it now that I'm noticing there's a bit of pedal there. I'm using that in different places. Not always exactly where marked. To me, it depends a lot on the piano and where you're playing, what the acoustic is. But you want to attract a little bits of color here. Now that's an advanced touch, but I think worthwhile working. So lots of detail in this one. I wouldn't just give this to any student. It has to be someone who can think creatively and respond creatively and rise to the challenge of all that articulation that's there. Près du Ruisseau. This is by Edwige Chrétien. This particular version edited by Sandra Mogensen. This is published by Deborah Wangus Music, and it's a nice legato piece, lots of French harmony, this lilting 6/8 character. I found it easy to get carried away with the tempo a little bit. Andantino is just slightly faster than walking, so I'm always trying to remind myself to hold back a bit. I think one of the challenges in this one will be bringing out that left hand in the second part, or in the third line rather, left hand melody while hiding the right hand. It's hard for students to really get a true singing tone, round tone, legato controlling with that non-dominant hand. And so I find this is a really good piece for that, at a good level where the notes aren't all that hard. So this is the Près du Ruisseau. So really, in some ways, quite straightforward, very simple. But the idea, it's a nice, easy piece where the notes don't get too crazy for grade 3, and you can just work on getting long lines, long crescendo diminuendo, trying to control the overlap as much as possible with the hands. The pedal is there to assist, trying to achieve that dolce character, and again, getting that left hand in there with integrity too. Again, if anyone has any questions, those of you here with me live, feel free to throw those in the chat box. I'll see those pop up. I'm happy to stop anytime. We published 2 pieces here by Bartók, back to back in the book. You'll see the first one here, Hide and Seek. We had a piece in the grade 2 book, and I said I would talk a little bit more about Bartók after that. Both of these pieces are marked Andante, the second one being a Song of the Rogue, and that's from the Time Warp Technologies Superscore app. That's their engraving of this. And both pieces, when they're slower like this in Bartók, there's a fair bit of articulation there, but not a lot to follow in terms of accents. It's mostly slurs, mostly legato here. But I'm thinking in terms of this idea of parlando rubato with Bartók, and the idea that music can carry on, or melodies can take on a sort of narrative quality to them, where it almost sounds like you're speaking with inflection, with pauses, with certain timing plays that we may interpret in music as rubato, but not quite rubato. It's different. It's following more speech rhythms. And I didn't mention this before, and I'll mention it more with a piece that we have in grade 4 about the idea of parlando rubato and Bartók, and the importance of the speech rhythm patterns, so that in his languages that he was dealing with, especially Hungarian, the accent is always on the first syllable. So you'll hear me at the beginning of slurs, not an outright accent, but just like when we're speaking, we're emphasizing certain syllables and certain words. I'm trying to accent the beginning of the phrase more than anything in Bartók's music. And when he writes an accent, it's not that we have to hit it hard, but that's where the stress is in the note. So I'm always trying to relate these andante, they're slower pieces of Bartók, to more about speech rhythm patterns, making it sound like I'm narrating a story with my right hand. So again, this piece is pretty straightforward. A little trickier than we might anticipate. These double thirds in the left hand aren't easy with those shapes. We've tried to include a fingering that'll work well. And then in that third line, the left hand gets busy and we actually get into a bit more music making there, a bit more energy. It's difficult for students, I think, to orchestrate that and overcome some of the challenges there. The second piece, Song of the Rogue, this is from For Children, Volume 2. A little bit more opportunity, I think, to be a bit more expressive in this one, with a lot more diminuendo markings. And again, the way the diminuendo markings are written there, it's more that he wants, again, to make sure that beat one, or the strong beat at the beginning of the slur, gets the accent or gets the stress. And so he doesn't mark accent specifically, but the way the diminuendos are marked lead me to believe that it's a lot of stress on the first syllable and everything after that diminuendo. Stress on the first syllable and then everything after that reflexes down a little bit. So I'm going to try and capture that, interesting changes in harmony from time to time here, and again, more of a narrative than an energetic dance piece. Playing through reminds me of another feature of a lot of his music where you hit these things on the offbeats. You see, that threw me off this time in line 3. I wasn't somehow prepared in my ear for the offbeat treatment there. So that's also a tricky nature, something that's sort of natural to his music. And again, in his music, he's trying to capture these folk elements. A lot of his music, or we could say all of his music, is informed by this musicological aspect where he would go out and try to record people, remote cultures, peasants in more rural settings, to figure out where their music might come from. It was a curiosity of his, and so he would take that back to the city, and when he would write his music, he tried to inform it based on these elements that he was hearing through the peasants' music. Okay, now we're going full modern here. This is a modern composer living in London, Ontario, Kevin Gibson. Daydreams on a Raft. He layers these beautiful major 6, minor 6, and sus chords. These are chords that instead of a third in between, they have a fourth or a second. And layering them in a way an octave apart that makes them, that voices them in an interesting manner. It's hard in this one, I think, because it's all parallel fifths, it's hard to get shape. And so if we use 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5 all the way with the pedal, we can get it. It's difficult. You'll see me cheating. I'm using different fingerings to try and join them slightly so that I can take the shortest possible distance from one chord to the next, so I don't get that hammer accelerating too much in certain places. I want to have one highlight through the phrase, and you can see the first phrase is short, then we get a longer phrase that goes over 4 bars. Hard to achieve that with just 1, 5 all the way through. I think 1, 5 is probably the way to go for a grade 3 student. Myself, you'll notice if you're watching my overhead, I'm using different fingerings to try and achieve the legato, and just try and layer these sounds and enjoy them and follow the dynamics carefully. I find bars 7 to 8, piano to forte, really difficult. I have to really pay attention there to make sure I get to forte in that 1 bar time frame. hopefully that's coming through clearly. I had another thought as I was getting into there too. I'm trying to remember what it was now in the middle. Pedal, I guess. How to pedal this thing. In the quiet sections, again, it's okay to have pedal that's a bit more resonant, and the louder it is, the cleaner I have to be. I remember what I was thinking now, voicing. Trying to voice the top note of the 4 in each chord can really be helpful and bring a lot of color. So I'm constantly trying to lean on that. And sometimes using finger 4 instead of finger 5 on top on a black key really helps deliver that voicing and color. Pretty advanced for a grade 3 student, but depending on where they're at and how quickly they learn it, I'll mention it because it sure makes a difference. And when they hear the difference, they can somehow strive and find a way to do that in their hand, even at this level. Okay. Let's go on to Amazing Grace. This is an arrangement of Amazing Grace at about the grade 3 level, maybe a difficult grade 3 level in some way. And this is by Andrew Harbridge, our publisher. I thought this fit really nicely because we don't often see in grade 3 this moving a left-hand pattern over a 10th or a 12th with an arpeggiated pattern. It's something that's a little bit difficult, but it's a good way to give students a heads up on that because they're going to do that in a lot of popular music, even at this level if they're curious about contemporary music. And we felt that this one would fit in quite nicely here. The tune's very familiar, just trying to broadcast long melodies here and make sure the right hand's penetrating and speaking over the left hand, which has more notes. It'd be very easy for the left hand to overpower the melody here. So I'm trying to hide that left hand when it's busy and keep the right hand projecting with more weight. I'm just reminded of one pedal trick at the end there. It's nice to have that the pedal layered through the last arpeggio coming from left hand to right hand. And then when I get to the B, there's a fair bit of resonance there. And I just let off the pedal really slowly so that all that's left is the B in the end. And students could be trained to filter out some of the noise there very carefully because you've got a long note with a fermata. It's kind of a nice spot to do that and just hear how the dampers can rub against the strings gently and still have some color and some resonance going and how you can control that gray area. It's a nice moment to try and do that, and that's reminded me of that little trick at the very end there. This is a neat piece, a terrible event. One of our teachers, Marjorie Purdy, out in Coquitlam, let's give a shout out to her. She's helped us a lot with the repertoire at all levels. And this is one of the gems that I believe it was her that she was able to unearth this from an old collection somewhere. Alexander Grechyaninov, a terrible event. Lots of interesting, dramatic, quick shifts with accents. Poco accelerando, which is difficult to achieve. I found this one, I've had to play it a lot over the last few months just to try and understand how it can move and what it can do and what the composer's intentions are, getting these tenutos out. I would start students with beat 4 is light, even though there's 4 notes at once at the beginning, and then beat 1 only has a single note. That single note has to be louder than the upbeats. And if we start a student there, they're going to have the right inflection going from da 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 da, and you'll hear that in my playing too. Trying to do that poco accelerando with long fermatas with these dramatic pauses. Really quick little character piece that's a lot of fun. Just a couple of straightforward ideas in that one, but a lot of fun to get students to think creatively and to listen creatively. Another one by Gretchaninov, After the Ball. Really neat, almost like a mazurka, tempo de mazurka. It's great in B minor. We don't get to play in B minor that often, only two sharps, but that A sharp in there, as you know, with the B minor harmonic scale, can be so thorny. This is a good one, and probably in my studio will be a must for students. I'll make sure that they play this at the grade 3 level to be able to play that key, because it comes up once in a while and has such an interesting color to it. This one, short phrase, long phrase with a swell, trying to get students to understand that texture there and how they can use their arms and their body to create that sound. I'm just reminded here, all of a sudden, it's this very similar to the Schubert Waltz in B minor that we have in our old grade 5 book. In some ways, similar feelings, but much easier to access. I was thinking too about pedal a little bit in the second half, or in the second section. We've got staccato in the left hand. I don't pluck those too short, just stepping gently to contrast with the right hand. And to get the forte sound, it's more up to the right hand there to get forte out of it. So I'm pressing pretty hard there to get the dynamic up and to make that right hand sing in full voice. Left hand just in the background, stepping gently. Kind of difficult to do, but would be a neat touch for this one to help show off the structure. Section B is so much different in character, and then taking time to get back to that section A with those long tones and using a long arm to get lots of leverage in the sound without getting too loud. Sailors. This is Saskatchewan composer Jesse Brown. A nice 6/8 lilt here with a really neat Celtic sailor kind of tune. Is this 2 pages? This is only 1 pages. So you'll be able to see me do the da capo al coda there. I'll get that in there. I'm just trying to keep the rhythm really strict. Make sure the left hand is nicely on time all the way through. Getting the accents in there, getting the energy through that right hand. Everything's hyper legato in my right arm. I'm trying to overlap all the keys quite carefully. And that allows me to control these swells, to feel like I'm on the water, getting the waves with the crescendos and diminuendos. Tricky moment there in bar 15 to get the 3/8 for most students. Took me a little while to feel what he was intending there, but it's just this dotted quarter note pulse that's rather unyielding in this one, without too much variation except for perhaps the very end. And that sort of keeps everything on track. I wouldn't be happy with the diminuendo in the last bar. I didn't quite nail that the way I wanted. But nevertheless, I'm reminded in this one too, it's very easy for the left hand to get too heavy. It's got to be light so that we get a down and an up and a down and an up. And my right hand's more carrying the dynamic in this one and managing the resonance through the pedal too. So lots of little tricks there, but a nice piece. I think people are really going to like this one, especially the kids. Okay, Brock Chart. We're featuring a couple of his pieces. We had one in the grade 2 book. This is Leaps and Bounds, I think one of my favorite pieces of the set that I've learned from him over the past year that I've had his music. Let's just plug his music quickly here. He's got these books, and he did a webinar for us last spring, where he's got a pop and a rock book, book 1, book 2, and also 2 jazz books and a couple other books he publishes. Really fun things where he's trying to emulate specific bands and specific contemporary pop genres. And this one, he's thinking about specific bands here. Number 1 would be Coldplay. Those of you who are familiar with Coldplay's music, you'll hear the reference here pretty quickly, I think, in terms of their music. And the other band he has in mind with this one is Snow Patrol. And the creative idea he's thinking about here, leaps and bounds. He had a vision of Superman leaping, bounding from building to save the universe. And so his harmonies play into the aspects of what those bands produce in terms of their harmonies, with this idea of leaping and bounding. And that's the left hand is going to be traversing my right hand. It's just keeping steady time here in the middle. Very expressive piece. The students love it. I've had several students play this piece, even adult age students love to play it. It's 2 pages long. I'm just going to show you the first page for now as I'm playing, and you'll get the idea here. You've probably heard me play this before already. So we expect to hear a lot of those, I think, on exams next year. It's a really popular piece that really speaks well. It's tricky because I find students that play this one, they're tentative about this. You know, you have to strike these notes rather quickly onto black keys. It's quite treacherous, and the way he's built that into the idea of Superman leaping and bounding from building to building, I find if I'm just brave and go for it, it works quite well. Especially if I use my thumb. You'll see me, those of you who are watching the overhead, using my thumb to hit those black keys down low and sort of pluck them out of midair without any aim to them. You have to know where you're going ahead of time to get to them. I try sometimes to try and adopt a more sensitive approach with this one, and it sounds really nice, but it just doesn't work the same way until I decided to be more bold and brave with it. So that's what I tell my students to do with it as well. Here's a look at the second page. I think in this one you should do the repeats. It's just simply a paper saver, so we're okay if students will play the repeats because they're short and they're a bit more integral to the form here on this piece. Okay, so that's Leaps and Bounds. If anyone's curious about Brock's music, go ahead and check out the webinar from the spring. He publishes under the label of My Music. Oh no, sorry, My Melodies. I'll hold it up there. That's his website on the top right corner. mymelodies.com. If you're curious about more, we're just trying to figure out how to get his music available here in Canada more. Okay, then back to the Russians. Glinka, Mikhail Glinka. This is not a simple polka. It sounds simple, but it's not. Lots of articulation, a little bit of tempo, and this one has to move a little bit. Allegretto, you don't have to go too fast, and the connotation here is that it's very light. The accents are important, the staccatos are important, and otherwise a little bit tricky. Gives students some 16th notes to work with and dance around in various configurations to give this stylized version of the dance steps. That comes from the Time Warp library as well, so you would have seen that on Superscore. Not much to say about that one. It's pretty self-explanatory. Think if you, as long as you feel down up, 2 beats in a bar, down and an up and down and another down because of the accent. Just watch the articulation very carefully, and that one just sort of speaks for itself. I think students will really like that. Daydreams and Memories, another piece from Andrew Harbridge. This one's more legato, a nice Celtic feel to it. Not based on any tune, it comes from his mind here, but a very Celtic feel to it, with lots of structure in terms of using the fermatas, using ritardandos, a little bit of rubato, and of course just really getting that phrase shape out there in the right hand, very important at this level to develop. Almost as if there should be lyrics to it. It's so lyrical. Getting the movement through it, trying not to rush, yet trying to create long lines. That's the goal in that one. Morning Prayer. This is Tchaikovsky, another Russian. This is really good because this is, it's not often that students at this level get to play 4 notes at once. So we get these 4-note chords, a little more complex than the Gibson piece we heard earlier that's along the sort of same lines. But way more lyrical. Got to get that top note a bit louder if we can. But I think the trick is here, just get students used to chordal playing, hearing the nice harmonies, and using the pedal to control the legato here. It's another one where the pedal can be a little dirty at the end there. And it's nice just to clean it up. You get to the end and then let that pedal come off really slowly while the hands are still holding. And you'll get some of that resonance taken out. So lots of neat things in here in terms of how to crescendo diminuendo, building relief in there with 4 notes can be really powerful for students. I think they'll really like this one. And you can hear the odd blank space. Oh, Mozart, immortal Mozart. How infinitely many inspiring suggestions of a finer, better life you have left in our souls, by Franz Schubert. One of the quotes that we scattered throughout these early books when there's some blank space. Okay, then we go into the jazz realm. Dr. Lee Evans, some of the extant compositions that he left behind that were never published. This is one of those that Andrew's been able to engrave. The Ragtag Boy. simple syncopated rhythms there, not too difficult. Again, bringing out that left hand in the third line is important. Here's a look at the second page there. Again, some more left hand involvement. Pretty straight rhythm though. Nothing too difficult, but really good for grade 3. It gives students an idea of how this kind of music, this jazz music, can work. And then we get arabesque. This is Angelina Gibson, Canadian composer. Very legato, lots of interesting color here. I try to really take my time with this one, just subtle rubato in places, but trying to get long crescendos and diminuendo through the middle section there, lingering on the long notes, lots of counting for students to feel and suspend time and space in a slower kind of way. Not too hard to play once you've learned it. It'd be difficult for students trying to get their head around the 4 sharps. But a nice way to do it, because of all the repeating patterns, just takes a little bit of time to program those patterns. And then a rather impressive piece to play around with color in the pedal. Return of the Superheroes. Here's a really neat piece by Andrew. He published this about 10 years ago, and we're happy to publish it here. Really bold. Students will love to have that driving rock left hand with these really rich right hand chords. Try not to let the left hand get too heavy. Have them play with full volume of that right hand without banging too hard, using a nice long arm. My arm is more active than my fingers in this one. Just gets those hammers going to the strings with integrity, but allowing them to deliver a glancing blow to the strings without being too harsh and too bright. Looking more for volume here and richness in the sound. I often get students playing chords like this, if we're looking for rich volume, to focus on the thumb as well as the 5th finger, to make sure the thumb has some integrity there, that it's adding volume as well. I think this one, that's only one page, okay. So a couple of tricky things here. I realized there's only pick up 16th notes, 2 16th notes going into a chord. And so it's worth isolating and getting students to focus just on those 2 16ths and how they're going to blend in one gesture into the chord. That I think is really important to work on quite a bit. Also the idea of how to make it sound legato. There's a lot of pedal tricks going on here with those dampers close to the strings to monitor the resonance, so I can create the sense of a phrase so that it sounds like my chords are or legato, even though they're not. It's more being controlled by a free arm. And the freer the arm can be, the more loose the sound, the more it feels like I know where I'm going, and I have to be able to pluck those chords out of midair, and I have to know where they are before I get there. If I go and I hover over top of the chord and then fire, it's not going to sound as legato. The pedal isn't going to work as seamlessly with that in that case. So watch my arm in the recording if you want to see or get an idea how that might work, and see if you can hear a difference in the sound. It's a similar in style, Lynette Sawatsky, The Royal Verdict. It's a neat choose-your-own-adventure song. This is over 2 pages. I'll show you the first page. I'll just sort of highlight where we're going with this one. So she gives you some license in terms of how you want to approach this, and gives you what to imagine. Imagine the powerful king listening to the sorrowful prisoner's plea for mercy as you play. And so the king enters the courtroom, is very bold, both hands are down an octave lower, and then The right hand may play as written in the third line, 1 octave higher or 2 octaves lower, cross over your left hand. And this is the prisoner begging for mercy. I'm just going to keep it simple and play it as written. And then on the second page after a fermata, the king considers the plea. And then as you get to the end, the student or the performer can choose what the verdict is going to be, depending on whether you play a sharp or a natural in that D chord at the end. And so I'll choose one when I get there, and you can hear what I decide. We'll go from the beginning. I'll show you the beginning here so you can see that, and then I'll show you the second page later as we get there, after I'm done playing. So the instruction at the end is play sharps if the king is merciful. And so there I chose the major chord so that the king would be merciful. This gives a bit of structure. Students could play this as a D minor chord at the end if they were in a less, I don't know, compliant mood. I don't know what the word is there. It's escaping me. Anyway, fun piece to play. You can choose your own adventure, big and bold. Nice to play these triads and make them sound good. And the last piece in the book here, In a Peaceful Place, this is by Wendy Edwards Beardall Norton. This is Christopher Norton's wife. They live in Stratford now. We know that Chris just became a Canadian citizen last month. Congratulations to him. Wendy's written a really nice piece here with a nice melody in the right hand. That melody goes to the left hand. Again, that'll be difficult for students to be able to phrase that. Here I'm trying to focus on the phrasing and just let those shapes go here. Being very calm in the left hand, just drop, lift in the left hand, monitoring everything carefully with the pedal. So a really sweet way to sort of close off the book there. I think this whole collection just provides a lot of really nice variety for students in terms of contemporary styles, the odd romantic piece. Let us know what you think. Anyone have any questions here that's with me in the live audience today? Seeing a couple of nice comments there. Thanks for that. I'm just going to take a look here and see. Okay, thanks everyone. Some nice positive comments. We're seeing some more names than when we started the session here. Thanks all of you for joining me here today. And then what we'll do then is we'll stop the live recording in the YouTube stream, and then anyone here in the Zoom room, if you have any questions or want to discuss something in particular off camera, we can do that. So thanks everyone here on the YouTube stream for joining us today. Keep in mind, keep a lookout next Saturday, November 23rd, we're going to have the convocation event. And then 2 weeks from today, we'll have Dr. Aaron Parks back. You will see the links to join those in your inbox this past week, and I'll hit you all again next week or the week after by email with those. And so, with that, I'm just going to stop the recording here and figure out how to get the YouTube